Hello and welcome to the Glazier Nation Podcast. This episode's another one of our live recordings from Glass Build. I had the pleasure of chatting with Jeff Dalaba and Ben Beeler. Jeff and Ben came on the podcast to discuss everything AGMT and NACC certification. If you're anything like I am before I chatted with Jeff and Ben, those might just sound like a bunch of random letters, but they did a great job educating me on the value of both certifications. Couple quick housekeeping notes. If you listen to this on Spotify and you enjoy this podcast, please go give us a 5-star review. And if you want to get involved with the podcast, if you have questions or feedback, or you know someone who would make a great guest, you can contact us on any of our social media, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram. It's all at Glazier Nation Podcast. And our sponsor for this episode is Glazier Nation. You can check out all their offerings at glaziernation.com. Back to Jeff and Ben. I had a blast chatting with them, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. Jeff, Ben, thanks for joining us here at the Glazier Nation Podcast.
Thank you. And glad to be here.
The first, someone tuning into this, because we're going to get into more details as we go along, but what's the bird's eye view of what AGMT and NACC are? Like, what is that?
Well, this really is about creating higher competency and higher quality for the industry. It's about driving, towards contractors that have standardized processes, standardized systems, consensus on the types of verifications and quality checks that they do. And then on the glazier side, it's setting a national standard for glazing. The glazier body of knowledge has never really been defined in a consensus way where it's a national standard. And this is a way with the AGMT program to create that national standard. And the neat thing about it is it's both through evaluation in a written format, and then also evaluation in a hands-on format. So it's really a way for the industry to improve, go forward, and know what they're getting.
Is it fair to say you're improving from like a standardization process, like you're setting a standard to be achieved either by the glaziers, the glazing contractors, the specifications, or all three? I mean, is that what we mean when we're raising it up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So it is an ANSI accredited certification program, and so part of any certification is that there has to be a conformity. Okay. So conformity. It's done through a conformity assessment or conformity evaluation to make sure that there's conformance to requirements that are designed by the industry, and that's the really neat thing about this.
And what we're basically trying to drive with the glazing contractors, consistent behaviors, consistency.
Sure.
One job to another, repeatability of good performance.
Sure. Not
just luck.
And yeah, that's a good one. You might get lucky on an install, but why, a glazing contractor or a glazier that's listening, why do we need a standard for this? I mean, maybe that answer is obvious, but from your point of view, Ben, why do we need that standard?
It sets glazing contractors apart from others, or sets them apart from unproven glazing contractors. They're audited in an extensive criteria, looking to see which one of the benchmarks they meet, which ones they don't. It's pointed out what they don't, what path they have to take, and then they're given a grace period in which to meet those particular requirements. Then they become certified, only then.
So that's why I would say the glazing contractor or the glazier would want this or need this, right?
Yes.
But what value would you say it's then providing the general contractor, the manufacturer, the architect, the owner?
They know what they're going to get. Too many times specifications call for somebody that's been in the business for 5 years or who has done similar jobs, quote unquote. There's no checks to see, what they've done, whether or not they were successful. This drives, as I said, the consistency. If they have the processes and procedures in place to predictably repeat the successful installs, then the contractor knows he's getting somebody that can do it again.
So interestingly, a lot of the requirements that general contractors and owners of buildings have to work with is subjective criteria. To put into a specification that a company's been in business for 5 years, it doesn't necessarily mean they've been successful or completed other projects or completed similar projects. In today's age, and when we look drive through any downtown area or metropolitan area, what is similar? So there's a lot of subjective things that are put into specs or have been put into specs in the past. And what this is driving towards is it's a way for specifiers, design teams to put something that is in specs that creates a requirement, a real requirement that has an ANSI, an ANSI accreditation built to an ISO standard that they can put into a specification. And then when a general contractor is hiring a sub or when an owner is specifying what they want for their project, they have a way of saying, okay, we want them to at least meet this benchmark and for the project. And there's a lot of risk with glazing. It's the skin of the building, as we all know. It's the skin of the building, and it's air infiltration and water infiltration and public safety, and the list goes on of things that could go wrong with glazing. And so you want somebody that knows what they're doing, and you want that confirmation. I guess we're trying to move from just having the lowest bidder on every job to having the maybe still the lowest cost, but the lowest responsible bidder.
The lowest qualified bidder. I always like that term.
Right.
Absolutely.
You get 3, 4, 5 bids to do something at your home. I don't think most people take the low cost, but construction, especially commercial construction, seems to be driven by that. Ben, you said something about repeatability. The last guest I had, the last podcast we did, was the guy with Ray's Robotics, Conley Oster. He's here at Glass Build. But he has a autonomous robot that does embeds for curtain wall. Okay. And they chose the glazing industry because of the repeatability. We all know that there's a lot of variables, and depending on what the architect does, we can have different shapes and stuff. But for the most part, you have perimeter anchors or you have F&T anchors, right? And it is repeatable. What do you guys see as the biggest struggle for glazers or glazing contractors achieving that, whether it's just their practices in the field or what you see as they're getting certified?
Too often glazing contractors today manage what I call crisis management. They're great at putting out fires. They happen every day. And the reason they happen is because there are not proper procedures and SOPs in place to drive what they do day to day. They're putting out fires. They're not good at setting up what they need to set up in the way of quality management systems in place that prevent those fires from happening in the first place. I'm familiar with a glazing contractor that had a written procedure on how to correct certain problems. They didn't have the first written document on how to prevent it from happening in the first place. And that's the example of what the NACC is trying to drive, having the procedures in place ahead of time so that you're managing the procedures, you're not crisis management.
When you work with a glazing contractor, you're working on setting those procedures for them, teaching them how to follow those, correct?
Theoretically, we are, by mandate of the certification body, we're just checking to see if they have them, if they meet the criteria.
Okay.
The NACC does have resources to help glazing contractors get over the hurdle of not having certain quality management systems.
And implement those processes.
Yes.
So I completely understand the glazing contractor putting out the fire and instead of setting those procedures. When you Jeff, when you bring this information to a glazing contractor of how you can help with those and how you can help them implement those or check those, what's the biggest roadblock you run into from the glazing contractor? Like, what's the biggest excuse of why they haven't done that or why they don't have time to do that?
I think what a lot of contractors fall back on is, well, we've always done it this way. And the reality is that may be the right way and that may be the best way, but do you have consensus? And as Ben's talked about working with different contractors, we've had contractors we've sat with, and something as simple as what happens when material comes in the door? What's the first thing you do with it? And you have 4 different people in the room from the same contractor, and they have 4 different answers of what happens. Well, we open every case and we inspect it. Well, we count the quantities. Well, no, we don't do that. We do this, and then where does it go? And then they start to get into this discussion, and you realize there's not even consensus within the contractor for many of them. And so this is a way for them to establish that consensus. And I think once they start to realize that we're not trying to change the way they do business, it's great that you've done it this way. forever. Just let's document that, and then let's create something that you can improve upon. It's hard to improve on, if you have a person who's always done it this way, it's hard to improve on that. But if you have a procedure, if you have checklists that are followed, you can say, well, we need to add this to the checklist because we missed that last time, or we need to address this. And, it says we use this piece of equipment and that hasn't been here for a year. So it's a way to create that improvement. And then when you bring somebody new in, to train them as well.
Yeah. That's where my brain was going, is the person this is how we've always done it. Well, when the person that's always done it leaves, what's the replacement plan?
Exactly.
And you see that a lot with glazing contractors, manufacturers. This guy's been great for 30 years. Place runs smooth. He's gone. What happens? So maybe in a little more detail, we've kind of touched on it. The NACC. How does a glazing contractor get involved, and what are kind of the biggest benefits for them? Ben, if you want to take that one.
One of the biggest benefits is quality improvement. That's a big aspect of the NACC requirements. Most glazing contractors, most businesses don't know what their biggest problems are. They think they do. They don't measure them, though. And in order to improve something, you've got to be able to measure it. Measure it, you can manage it, you can improve it. And so there's certain processes where they have to learn how to actually measure, quantify quality issues, so they know unequivocally what their biggest problem is, and then look for root causes. Not that somebody was careless or they forgot to do this, but get down to the real root cause and then implement something that will prevent that from happening in the future. That's the quality improvement aspect of the quality management system requirements.
Now, a glazing contractor wants to get involved. Where do they start?
Contact naccprogram.com.
Okay.
There are links there to apply.
Okay.
Once they make application, one of us will contact them and try to set up a 30-minute virtual meeting to talk about next steps, requirements, and timelines.
Now, the Jeff, the AGMT is different in that it's working directly with the glazers.
That is correct. The AGMT is a personnel certification, and to evaluate personnel, it's done through psychometric testing, and so we've set up a test that is both written. They go through a 125-question written test that tests the entire glazier body knowledge, and then they move on from that to a hands-on test. That hands-on test is where they're putting their hands on storefront, they're putting their hands on curtain wall, they're putting their hands on ceiling, and they're going through and doing actual installations. It's a rigorous test, but I think the neat thing is when glaziers go through the test and they come back afterwards, they say, that was a hard test, but it was fair. And, it tested the real world things that we do every day. And when you can hear those kinds of things coming back, that you're heading the right direction with the way testing is. Nobody likes to take a test, but you're heading the right direction when they're coming back and saying that was fair and that was a good test.
And you're also getting the certification, which ideally would help you get more or higher quality work, right?
Absolutely. It defines that that glazier body of knowledge to work independently as a glazier when in consideration for maybe a supervisor or foreman role or super role. It's smart for contractors to look and say, hey, they have the AGMT certification. We have confidence that they've gone through and they've been tested.
Now, a glazier doesn't independently, like you don't have a testing center. These are set up in areas and it's kind of like a bulk testing, like maybe through a local organization or a couple glazing contractors. What's the best way to get involved if you're a glazing contractor and you're interested?
Well, actually, for glazers that want to get
glazier,
tested,
I should say.
Yeah, for glazers that want to get tested. In the past, we've gone through where we did do, mostly just moving to an area and doing testing there. But now we're set up with Prometric, which Prometric is a testing organization. They test, if you want to get a real estate license or insurance license or a nursing certificate, you go to Prometric and you can take the test from that organization. We now are operating through Prometric as well for a written test.
Okay.
So they can come to a Prometric center at their convenience. They can schedule it on their own time and they can go and take a written test. from there, once we have enough of a group in a regional area, we can set up regional testing.
Okay.
And then we ship in test rigs, we set them up, and we've done it in suppliers' facilities. We've done it in contractor shops. We've done it in some union training facilities. So there's a lot of different places we can set up. We have some areas where we don't have a facility we can go to, and we've worked with like event centers or convention centers in order to get space that we can rent.
So maybe ignorant question of me. These two items, NACC, AGMT, these are two separate certifications.
They are.
AGMT, the glazing contractor, the business is getting. The NACC, I have it backwards, don't I?
Yeah.
NACC, the glazing
Business
contractor,
entity.
the business.
Yes.
The AGMT for the individual glazer.
That's correct.
Now, an architect or an owner that wants this standard for their project, when they specify this, can they specify both?
Yes. Either or.
Either or.
Yes.
Okay.
Master Spec, in fact, in their spec writing template, has the NACC component in there as installer qualifications.
Okay. And are you guys seeing, do you have any success stories of people that have gone through this and then maybe they were awarded a job because of the specification? They met the specification or anything like that? Any success stories?
Yes.
Absolutely. It's funny, when we first built this, I think we were a little naive in saying, okay, if we could just get this into specs, we're golden. But
Sure.
that's been one hurdle. And now we are in specifications on a regular basis. We track the Dodge report, and we see that there's been 1,200 projects so far this year in 2023 that have required the NACC specification, along with AGMT, employing AGMT glazers. We're seeing that grow, but the other piece of this is that the owners and the general contractors have to recognize that, and that's really where the enforcement of the specification comes in.
Yeah.
If it's in a specification and a general contractor doesn't recognize what that is, they may just overlook it or may not see it, or they may just say, we don't care about that. So there's this big education piece that has to, happen for the industry, and it's been a really big lift for us to get out to general contractors, talk to building owners, facility managers as well, and even going back to architects that now they're putting this in specs, but they also enforce their specs themselves by defending it. So if they put something in spec, we want them to know what that is that they're putting in specs. So doing AIA courses, individual meetings, and contractor offices in order to make sure that there is an understanding of what this is.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there's success stories where glazing contractors who are certified were number 2 on the bid list.
Okay.
And the job was awarded to the one that's not, and they've, as Jeff said, they stood up and defended themselves and were awarded the project as a result.
Well, that's an example of your lowest qualified bid, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it sounds very similar to architectural sales, that it's a 2-sell. Like you have to sell the owner or architect.
Yes.
And then you also have to sell the GC or glazing contractor, right?
Absolutely.
So you said AIA courses, education. I mean, is that the main way that you guys are promoting this?
We're doing AIA courses. We're participating in industry events. We just participated in the Advancing Construction Quality event, and we had an opportunity to be on stage there and present what we're doing. Rodney Harvey from CDC came in and worked with us, and we did a joint presentation on glazing risk and how to mitigate that risk for general contractors through having certifications in place. And afterwards, it was rewarding because you had general contractors and really for the most part quality teams from the general contractors come and say, hey, we really need this and we need to know how to implement this for our organization. So we know we're heading the right direction, but it is a big lift.
Yeah.
Jeff has been handling most of the big lift with the marketing. He's got a lot of successes in that area.
Well, you've mentioned risk twice, and I've heard an architect refer to the glazing is 1% of the building, but it's 99% of the risk. And being able to specify that. I mean, the projects I'm involved in, I've seen an evolution, and maybe it's just me, but when I did projects 20, 25 years ago with my father, like there wasn't a lot of water testing, and we weren't doing huge projects, but there wasn't a lot of water testing. I didn't see a ton of architect and GC scrutiny of the shop drawings and documents and field inspections. And I mean, we didn't have iPads, so no one was walking around taking pictures with iPads.
Sure.
And now I see a lot more GC participation on installation instructions, shop drawings, a ton more water testing.
Yes.
So the level of quality that the owner, architect, GC wants has risen, but I haven't seen really like the glazing industry be able to raise the cost to match that. Maybe they're just too competitive. This seems like a great way to raise that playing field for everybody.
It absolutely is. It's a way for general contractors and owners to benefit. It's a way for glazing contractors, as Ben was talking about, improving, continuous improvement. There's a risk to everybody on a building envelope. So, there's warranties in place for the manufacturers. There's warranties in place that the glazing contractors have to stand behind, and so there's a lot of risks across the board. This is a way for them to mitigate that risk by creating a path that has verifications and checks that are already done along the way in order to catch those items that may have been missed along the way.
Something I read fairly recently, but it was a study that was done a long time ago, 10 years maybe, by an insurance institute. And I've got the figures probably not accurate, but it was roughly 2/3.
They're accurate enough for this podcast.
Okay. But if 67% of about 2/3 of litigation brought because of a construction project going sideways, dealt with water infiltration into the curtain wall. So that there is a big risk to a lot of the stakeholders in a commercial construction project.
So what I like about what you guys are doing in these certifications is the glazing contractor wants the same thing that the owner wants. We want a weather-tight building, but the glazing contractor also has to win the contract. And if they put too much time and cost into quality control and quality assurance, they're going to lose the project. This is a way to level that playing field so we can all get what we want, a weather-tight building, but not do it at our own cost, so to speak.
What's the old expression? Service, price,
right?
And
you can pick
quality,
two,
pick
right?
two.
Yeah. So is that the reception that you guys mostly get from owners, architects, GCs, glazing contractors? I mean, are most people at least psychologically on board, and then they support it?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody says it's a great thing. It's super. It's needed in the industry.
What's the biggest roadblock of people accepting it? Does it come down to when they're looking at those two competitive bids and one is significantly cheaper, but they're not meeting the spec of that standard? Is that where we lose?
Yes, that's part of it.
Okay.
Definitely.
It is, definitely.
What's the other part?
Getting the glazing contractors to understand what's involved in becoming certified and getting them across that hurdle, getting them to the finishing line.
Is that a case of, I'm too busy, that kind of thing?
It's a lot of that.
And it's a lot of I've always been a fan.
I'm too busy putting out fires to learn how to improve my quality.
I've been a fan of, if you don't have time to do it today, how are you going to have time to fix it tomorrow? And this seems like that.
Yes.
Kind of in a nutshell of, if you invest the time and, capital into this program, there will be, either projects that you've won because of it, or less headaches, less callbacks, that kind of thing.
No question.
And it's quantifiable too.
So what have I missed?
I think you've hit just about everything.
I think I'd like to add, that this is an industry program. So we operate under the Architectural Glass and Metal Certification Council, which is AGMCC, which is an industry board. This isn't something that Ben and I created in the back room and brought to the industry. This is something that the industry has been involved in, the development. They sat down and read the questions. We've had wonderful companies like Skidmore, Owings, Merle, and Turner Construction and Clark Construction just got involved with us, and manufacturers like Dow Sealants and Tubelite and Conair and Guardian Glass, and glaziers and glazing contractors that have been involved in this as well, either serving in board positions, committee positions, or in our test writing. We have item writing workshops, both for the written and the hands-on, where we have the industry come in. We don't write the questions. They write the questions. They operate through peer groups. They go through beta testing in order to make sure that they test well. But this is completely industry created. We just have the opportunity.
The commercial construction industry, not just the glazing. It's a cross-section of all the stakeholders.
Yeah, everybody that's involved in some way as a stakeholder in the glazing package.
I don't know how you do this, but if you could, if there was some way you could quantify, like how many less callbacks you have, because that changes that equation of the bid day price. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Is those callbacks are so costly.
Yes.
And I see it all the time, particularly with the low bidder. Right?
It would be nice to have those figures.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that.
A lot of companies, before they implement a quality management system, they don't document it.
Yeah.
It's squirreled away somewhere in a job folder, but it's not on their dashboard.
Yeah.
They don't monitor that month to month.
No, I was just thinking how convenient that would be to just be able to show.
Before and after.
Yeah, but you're right. That's probably not quantitative.
Yeah, we just had our annual meeting. One of the things that came out of our annual meeting was, the industry would like to see more case studies. So we've got some homework to do. We've got to dive some more into case studies.
Sure.
We've heard all the anecdotal stories. Hey, the punch lists are shrinking, and that's better. We've had less callbacks. That's better.
Maybe work with some bonding companies that know the specific costs of all those callbacks.
It's funny how many legs there is to this. I mean, when you start to look at it, you say, there's the benefit to glazing contractors for their own entities and general contractors and owners. But then you start to throw insurance into it and bonding into it. And, there's a lot of legs and a lot of areas that can benefit from, what this is doing and the industry coming together to create this.
Sure. Ben, you want to add anything? Did I hit
Yeah,
all
I think you did.
Well, I appreciate you guys' time and enjoy Glass Build.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, take care.